I don't really like dystopian fiction anymore, and I have started to quietly wonder what the point of the genre is. Now, this is a relatively new thought and feeling of mine, and I want to explore it here. I haven't planned out a lot for this video. It's a feeling I have that I'm going to talk with myself about, and I want to see if you agree with me. Many of the greatest, most respected, most revered, and inspiring works of fiction in the Western literary canon throughout the 20th century have been works of dystopian fiction. Like, for example, arguably the most famous work of dystopian fiction in the history of literature, George Orwell's 1984, or Octavia Butler's The Parable of the Sower, or Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. I could go on and on. All of the books that I've just mentioned often appear on best ever books lists from big magazines, publications, or just random people you talk to. These dystopian novels are so worshipped by the reading community at large, and I'm kind of done with them, to the point that I've started to ask myself, is dystopian fiction entirely pointless as a genre? I have become very cynical about it, and I want to talk about that here. And before I begin, I also just want to say that I am lumping post-apocalyptic fiction in here as well. Anything from the critically acclaimed The Road by Cormac McCarthy, to the wildly popular Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White, and even comic books like this one, Geiger by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. While I am aware that post-apocalyptic fiction and dystopian fiction are separate genres, I'm lumping them together here because books within these two genres often share a lot of key elements. They are often inspired by the state of our world today, or in the today of when they were written. And I'm talking politically, theologically, socially. Dystopian fiction serves as a warning for what could happen if certain events take place, if certain ideologies rise to the surface and gain power. While post-apocalyptic fiction basically shows us what happens if those kinds of governments and powers ultimately win and do what we all fear, which is destroy everything. So in that way, they are two sides of the same coin, and I'll be discussing them together, and I'm sick of them in equal measure. But why? Why am I so cynical towards these genres, and why am I saying something as arguably outlandish as 1984 and The Handmaid's Tale are pointless? I very much want you to disagree with me here in the comments. My argument might be shallow, it might be hollow, it might be silly and poorly thought out, but I feel like it's a good thing to discuss. Right now, the state of the world isn't looking very nice, for many people and for many reasons. Extremist far-right political parties are gaining momentum in many countries all around the world. It feels like for many of us, nowhere is safe. And when we talk about this stuff, when we have discussions about it, whether it be online or in person with our friends, someone will inevitably say something like, God, it's like 1984. God, it's getting to be like The Handmaid's Tale. We're living in a dystopia. The apocalypse is around the corner. People will compare our current situation to a work of fiction. And I always get this sick feeling in my stomach whenever this happens. Partly because people often misunderstand these works of fiction, but that's a minor thing. The big reason I feel this way is because it doesn't do anything. It doesn't change anything. For George Orwell, Octavia Butler, Margaret Atwood to predict where things might go when looking at politics, theology, whatever, it doesn't do anything. Pointing out that our current climate kind of feels like we're moving towards The Handmaid's Tale. So f***ing what? Protesters dressing up like handmaids. It feels like they're cosplaying. It feels like they're just doing a reference. Hey, look, this is like that thing. Okay, doesn't do anything. It feels so hollow, so vapid. It doesn't feel like we're enacting any kind of change. And I'm one to talk, right? I'm not at a protest right now. I'm making a YouTube video. Protesting is increasingly dangerous as an act. We are putting ourselves at risk by doing so, and I'm transgender. I can't go to prison. I mean, prisons shouldn't exist. I'm an abolitionist, but I'm in a vulnerable minority group. And I think that's another thing that kind of irritates me, is when people that aren't in minority groups make references to 1984. I'm like, okay, yes, you're very clever, but by pointing this stuff out, it doesn't move the blade further away from my throat. I still feel it. I also, when thinking about reading a dystopian or post-apocalyptic story, just think to myself, what is the point? Where is the joy? Where is the escapism in this? If I watch Mad Max or read something like Hell Followed With Us, I'm not getting any joy out of it. It's not escapist fiction because it just feels like a looming shadow. It feels like this kind of a world is right around the corner. But also, obviously, fiction doesn't exist to just be escapist. Fiction makes you think. It makes you empathize. We know these things. Fiction is many things, but I don't feel like post-apocalyptic fiction right now does anything that fiction can do. It doesn't help us escape, it doesn't distract us, it doesn't entertain us. But I also don't think it has anything to teach. I don't think it serves as a warning sign. When I read this book, and by the way, I'm a huge fan of Andrew Joseph White, I just prefer all of his other books. But when I read this, I just thought, yeah, that's terrible. A cult of religious fanatics that ended up destroying the world and still aren't done with it yet, and a group of queer teenagers who rise up against that cult. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's interesting, but it's not teaching me anything. It's not warning me against anything. It's not getting me to mull over any particular philosophy, and it's certainly not entertaining me or distracting me from how terrible the world is right now. It doesn't feel like it serves any kind of purpose whatsoever. It's a hollow piece of fiction. I can positively criticize it for its good writing, good characters, for its clever dialogue, for its innovative story, concept, plot, whatever else. I can look at the pieces that make up this novel and say all of those things are good. It's a well-written story with compelling characters and an exciting plot. I can do all of that, but you don't just criticize something for its elements, you also look at it within the wider context of life itself as it exists today. And what does this book do but add to my anxieties and my frustrations and my fear? My general fear of everything right now. Obviously, after his death, a lot of stuff came out about Cormac McCarthy that gives me the ick, and I don't really want to read him anymore. But I have read a lot of his books, and I was a big fan, and I read The Road, and it's a harrowing, dark, horrible thing, and I like harrowing, dark, horrible things. They can be entertaining in their own way, and they can be opportunities for introspection. But if I read The Road now, I would only feel an ache in the pit of my stomach because it feels like that world is so near and I don't know what to do about it. As one individual, I don't know how to stop the road from becoming a reality, and so I feel entirely powerless. The book would only serve to remind me of that, and then I would be sad. Then I would fall into a pit of depression for a while. And returning to dystopian fiction like 1984, the same thing is true. I've read 1984 a few times. If I were to pick it up now, given the state of the world, I would go, yeah, oligarchs are scary. Yes, the propagandist control over language is frightening. Yes, all of these things are actually happening now. Newspeak is a real thing. Surveillance states are rising up everywhere. Yes, media bias is out of control. Yes, narratives can flip on a dime depending on who we wish to serve and what money could be made, and who is pulling the strings, especially opening the purse strings. All of that is true, yes. So when you read 1984, you go, yeah, things like this really are happening. Yes, these elements are real. Big Brother feels like a real thing. Yes, George Orwell was very clever, very visionary, blah, blah, blah. So fucking what? What does it do? It only serves to remind us that George Orwell was very clever 80 years ago, but we're still f***ed. We don't do anything with this information. Artists, visionaries, philosophers, writers, they come along and they warn us through their films, their paintings, their literature, their music. They warn us of where we're headed. And then nothing changes. 1984 has been real multiple times in multiple places across the planet for decades. 1984-esque things have happened in many places for many different reasons, artificially created by many different regimes. None of them were stopped by the existence of 1984. None of them were stopped by millions of people reading that book and going, yeah, it really makes you think. I don't know what to do with it. I read 1984, I read The Handmaid's Tale, I read Parable of the Sower, and I go, yeah, gosh, isn't that something? This person is very clever, very forward-thinking. I can imagine that this is going to happen, or yes, this is currently happening somewhere. And then what? It doesn't do anything. We so revere novels like Fahrenheit 451 and The Handmaid's Tale and Brave New World. We look at the topics that they explore: surveillance states, eugenics, theocratic patriarchy gone wild. And then you go, yeah, Trump's doing that. Yeah, Putin's doing that. Yes, this country is behaving in this way. Yes, this religion is controlling people in this way. Okay, great. These writers are very clever. Pat on the back. It all feels so masturbatory. What am I supposed to do with it? I don't understand how reading post-apocalyptic and dystopian fiction does anything. I fail to see where it fits into the canon of literature. And what's so mind-boggling to me is just how revered they are. When we talk about the greatest works of fiction ever written, especially in the 20th century, especially in the Western canon, we talk about Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, we talk about George Orwell's 1984, we talk about Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, etc. We talk about these books and we go, wow, Octavia Butler and Aldous Huxley, these people are really clever. So, these are some of the greatest writers of all time, writing some of the most creative and visionary and oddly, creepily prophetic things ever put to paper. Okay, I will respect them for that. I will pat them on the back. But what? And then obviously this only leads us to the bigger question, what are books for? What is reading for? People read for pleasure. People read for escapism and distraction. People read to be taught a lesson and to have things expand their scope of knowledge of the world. And if I complain about dystopian fiction within that context, could I just do the same with all fiction and throw out all literature? I don't know, to be honest. And I'm sure people in the comments have asked these exact questions. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I can get a little bit too existential if I think too much about the purpose of art. And it kind of starts to freak me out. Maybe I'm overthinking, but I don't like that. I think we should overthink because thinking is great. But in this context, I'm bringing up the point that what's it all for? Oh, I've really bummed myself out. I want it to do something. If we read 1984 and The Handmaid's Tale, I want them to provide us with a solution, a warning that we could maybe use to U-turn ourselves out of the road that we're on, that will lead us to the fictions described in these books. But instead we just go, gosh, it's like The Handmaid's Tale. I fucking know it's like The Handmaid's Tale. Yes, I know that. They're policing our bodies. They're removing our rights. They're surveilling everything we do. Okay, you're very clever. I'm glad you read 1984. I'm glad you read Parable of the Sower. Now what? It's up to us to do something. I know that. And maybe that's the whole point. We read these books and we are inspired. Maybe that's the point. We will protest anyway. We will get angry at the state of the world because it's the state of the world. We don't need fiction to tell us that. But then, what path am I going down by thinking this way? I don't know. Ultimately, I am ending up where I began, which is I don't see the value in dystopian and post-apocalyptic fiction anymore. I don't know what to do with these things. I don't find any value in them. I do not enjoy reading them. They only frustrate me and upset me and remind me of the terrible course that we are currently on without any way to course correct because we're not the ones steering the vessel. Blah. I am sorry if this video has upset you. I am very sorry if everything I've said is really poorly thought out and I haven't considered it in a meaningful enough way. This video, as some of my videos are, has existed as a vessel to mull over my own feelings, and I don't think with the case of this video, I've gone anywhere. Sometimes when I make videos that are just me mulling over a point and ranting about something, I often reach a conclusion that I didn't expect. Just by talking to a camera, as if this thing is my therapist, I end up coming to some sort of conclusion that I didn't expect, and I'm really satisfied by the answer that I reached. That hasn't happened this time. I'm exhausted by these genres still, and that's it. So please, tell me in the comments that I'm wrong and give me reasons why. Tell me that these books do actually have value and are revered for a reason, and I'm just being very ignorant and naive. In the case of this video, I want that. I welcome it because I need to be lifted up. I need to be told that I'm wrong so I can see things from a different lens because right now, just feel tired. Subscribe for books.